Security, do we have any ice?
You son of a bitch.
Anyway, sometime in the summer of 48. No, 1932. No, 1939.
But when I say I want the moon, I expect the moon.
Because he was caught with chewing gum on his pubis.
World handed to us on a plate, and then you swing in on a chandelier, drop your pants, and crap on it.
You're a very, very gifted storyteller.
I killed my CO.
You have lost your mind!
Where the hell are you supposed to be?
Because Scouts honor.
This is my business.
I mean business!
Hello and welcome to Blowing Smoke, the officially unofficial Mad Men podcast, where we dive into each and every episode of one of the very greatest pieces of televisual storytelling ever. So sit back, relax, and smoke them if you got them, because this right here is the Cure for the Common podcast. We're your co-hosts, Kyle and Levi Huffman. I'm Kyle.
I'm Levi.
And here we are back for another episode, the penultimate episode, Levi, of Season 1 of Mad Men. Of course, iconically called Nixon versus Kennedy. And as we've been talking about the last few episodes, like, really this last two episodes is a really strong 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
That concludes one of the very greatest first seasons of TV ever, of course, with Mad Men. We're a little biased, of course. We got a Mad Men podcast after all. But this is really strong stuff, and you know, we've talked a lot about it. I'm actually there's a few portions I actually would like to read from today of Matt Zoller Seitz's complete critical companion, where he gives recaps for every episode. He made the link between this and the next episode, which is of course The Wheel, kind of as a single essay, kind of uniting them together, saying they're kind of almost a part one and a part two.
Yeah.
And it definitely feels like, because a big bang explosion kind of happens with regards to Don and Pete in this episode, which leads to one of the most iconic scenes of the show.
Yeah.
And then the last episode, and we kind of talked about this last time, is almost strangely like an epilogue to this season, and a kind of the last little bits of the season is wrapped up. How do you even begin to kind of characterize this episode, not only in terms of what it is in of itself, but also where it fits into season one, how it acts as a culmination of sorts for the Don Draper story in season one, and his, the relationship between him and Pete? Like, where do you even begin with an episode like this? Because I think we've had some other episodes throughout. 5G was one. I think the Hobo Code was another one. That once we get to like especially iconic episodes of the show, we need to really acknowledge them as such. Where does this just fit into you in just this season and in Mad Men in general?
Well, I kind of talked about last week. I mean, that the show never operates under these specifications again, in terms of expecting that a big shoe's going to drop, or like there's going to be some big plot thing that happens at the end of a season. Like, the biggest version of that you see in seasons 2 and 3 again. Or they happen in these more like organic ways. Like, for example, 2 and 3, you have like 2, the final episode of that, the finale of that season is all about, the Cuban Missile Crisis is happening. Kind of the big cliffhanger of history, in a certain way.
Yeah.
It's like, we might all die. I don't know,
Actually, far bigger than even what Kennedy-Nixon election is,
right. But that with that, it was all about, will Don leave the company, and Duck being forced out, and
he's getting introduced today, funny enough. So.
And then even the third season about like, they're having to sell the company, he's getting divorced. Like, there's kind of an obvious kind of like 1-to-1 there. And then also, even in season 4, him getting married again. After that, the show goes into a whole other mode of dealing with those things. Like, sure, Lane kills himself, or season 6, Don's found out by his daughter to be, unfaithful, or even season 7, part 1 with Bert's death. Like, there are versions of that in every season, but this feels like the most mainstream version of that, of this like face-off between people. But I think what's ultimately so important about this episode is the constant questioning throughout this show of who is Don Draper, like, and literally who even is he as a person, who is he in terms of this company, who is he as our main character, and like that mystery kind of continuing. What's kind of great about this show is that mystery is told to us, and we're the most important people that it needs to be told to, obviously. And so once that's done, the rest of the show ultimately becomes about, well, then can he keep up this... I don't even want to use the word facade because that's so easy to use talking about this, but can he just keep up appearances? Can he be the person everyone needs him to be? Of course, the answer by the end of the show is, yeah, for the most part, he actually can, but then it's about, well, he just doesn't want to anymore, and so that is a far more interesting show than most other shows would make a show be, I think.
Yeah.
And by saying that, having the show play out in that way rather than in basic ways. But so that, I think, and also by showing that, unlike The Sopranos, the kind of villain of a season in this show won't be vanquished in a way that is normal. In fact, to go from a scene like the scenes like what we have here to years later, that's a very sensitive piece of horseflesh, like, that he's taking up for Don, and that Don overall has a pretty positive opinion of him, relatively.
Yeah.
And that's just a far more realistic and interesting way to deal with rivalry, rather than...
Well, it's also, again, it goes down to the human terms that this show operates.
Right.
It's like, you can't just kill a coworker. You know what I mean? Like, you can have conflicts and things. I think, like, what Seitz wrote in this particular essay about this episode and the next one, The Wheel, about the whole, like, he goes back and talks, and we talked about this earlier on, I think it was New Amsterdam, where Pete, like, they want to get rid of Pete, but they're like, well, we got to keep Pete around because he's got all these connections and is connected to old New York and this old money, and they're, like, frustrated by that.
Yeah.
And then that is counteracted here with the big confrontation with Bert being involved.
Right.
That Bert basically says, well, he is who he says he is, and Donald Draper is in this room, and what he represents to Sterling Cooper is not anything you can easily wipe away. And so there's this, like, acknowledgement, really, by the end of the next episode, more so than even this one, I would say, of like, well, this whole war that we've fought with each other subtly and then more explicitly recently is one that's just going to have to basically stop, because we both are going to have to be here at this company. Because
even Bert says, fire him if you want, but I'd keep an eye on him.
Yeah.
One never knows how loyalty is born.
And naturally, Don's like, what the hell are you talking about? Basically in his face. And as you said, over the course of the show, like, the Don-Pete relationship is among the most complicated in the whole show, which is saying a lot, because there's a lot of complicated duos of people that aren't even, of course, romantic relationships, but are just working,
and also them both recognizing
the value of the other.
Right, because I think, I feel like that takes longer for Don in its own way than it does for Pete, probably.
Because Pete doesn't really start to flourish until, professionally, I'd say, until seasons 3 and 4 and 5. Right. As far as, like, the potential of who he is as an accounts man.
But he is good at his job. But, as far as, like, when he becomes partner and leading up to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's even its own moment. We laugh about it because it's such a funny moment. But in season 4, we were kind of talking about this a little bit last week, when Pete has to basically throw away the is it the American Airlines account, or it's some big government contract that he basically has to get rid of because of Don's...
It's not American Airlines, because that's some stuff in season 2,
right,
but it is something related to the defense industry or something like
basically
that.
They have to throw away...
Because that was going to
save him.
Yeah, right.
And he says, you literally need to just get rid of it. And he does it. And we laugh about it because it's funny when Roger says you effed up, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that's even Roger acknowledging you can do what you need to do, and you just didn't do it. You know.
Yeah, right.
And so
that's also when Roger's having all these stresses for himself that he's
about
throwing,
to lose Lucky Strike.
Yeah, and he's hiding that, and he's taking out
we lost Chevy. You knew, like
yeah.
But
yeah, you're right.
But like that's even an implicit.
And
moment
Don knows that Pete's got to eat crow in this meeting, but it's because of what I told him to do.
Right.
You know, and he knows that's difficult for him.
Yeah.
So to call these guys friends by the end of the show is a bit of a stretch, but they definitely see the value in each other. And I think that is, like I said, one of the richest relationships in all the show.
Yeah.
And everything you said about the stakes of the end of seasons is very true. I will ever so slightly push back only to suggest the show does deal a lot in fate of the company stakes.
Yeah, no, it does.
That is that's a few times an end of season like cliffhanger almost. None more satisfying than the end of season 3, which we'll talk about eventually, of course. That I remember like watching that, and that was as close as to like a Mad Men episode being filled with shootouts at the end of a Sopranos season, because it was, oh my god, they're literally going to create a whole new company, and the thrill of that was, and then they tried
having meetings in hotel rooms. It's all very like all over the place.
Yeah, and the show does deal in those terms a little bit here and there, but that's Mad Men's version of, all right, who's getting whacked this season, like the Sopranos like to do.
I mean, anybody can write a prose poem to a potato chip.
And then what I like is eventually, like, by the end of the show, like, well, it's just absorbed by this other company, so then that just disappears as a...
Yeah, because that's kind of the season 2, what I think's so great about its ending is it's, like, such a fascinating amount of stakes that are going on, because it's like, okay, Don's been gone for, like, 2 episodes. Hasn't come back. Comes back, and then and then it's all about like, well, do we care more about Don, or do we care more about Duck? And Roger, even with his arguments with Don in that season and throughout other things, is like, nah, yeah, we like him. And even Bert's like, nah, yeah, we like it. Like, you know, and that but ultimately it's all about, the question becomes more of a literal, like, be on the road kind of like, is he just going to give up everything just to be living in California and just give up?
And the whole like mythology of California is more explicitly introduced in season 2, and it's one that the show keeps going back to.
Yeah, and that's also the season of like Bobby Barrett and that is season 2, right?
Yeah.
And all that stuff, and about Betty thinking, oh, like, I'm thinking about divorcing him. It's honestly weird because it's Don at his most under siege, but also at a point of like, well, I don't care because I can just restart anyway, and it doesn't really matter.
It's also season 2 where we get more of Peggy outside the office. It's right where Mom's introduced, and then the whole Colin Hanks characters in season 2.
Also,
and that's a lot more about who's Peggy outside the office. That's kind of her focus.
And so, like, that's what's weird about him, is he's most under siege, but yet also most at peace with the fact that he is, to the point where he can literally walk into a meeting after having basically been gone for like a month or more. I don't even remember how long it is.
It's like at least a month and a half.
Literally has the company restructured, is basically being bought out by these like British people.
PPLO.
And sit there and go, I don't have a contract and I'm unreliable.
Yeah.
But who cares?
Yeah.
And walk back out, and they go, No, yeah.
Donald Draper is in this room,
Right.
basically. Like,
and then, but then all of that, just to say, also literally, this Cuban Missile Crisis is going on, and also like, oh, and I'm pregnant, and like, just literally, that's just like, honestly, one of the best I think season finales of a show to just be like throwing that much at the wall and it makes sense. Like, you know, to come up with all that is just very complicated.
Yeah.
And you start to see some of that stuff here. I mean, with the whole contract question with Don and him not wanting to have a contract, and you know, and like I said, what I love about this show is the currency of favors more in terms of, well, this information's out there about Don, and it gets to a point where it honestly becomes almost an open secret that he is who he is. Enough people start to find out. I mean, I guess it's really kind of just Pete, Bert, and Betty eventually, and then Megan basically knows it. But
Peggy knows a version of it.
Peggy knows that there's something weird going on, but she doesn't know
because of the suitcase. Like, there's a little.
Right.
She doesn't get a lot of stuff out of that, but there is a little bit of an acknowledgement of that.
And at the end, you know, the very end of the show, and she's like, "What did you do?" You know, and of course we laughed about this. Scandalized my child. Yeah. We should name an award after that. No, but
I'm trying to even think what that would be for.
I don't know. It's like, what would it be called? Like Big Sir's Scandalized My Child.
The Big Sir Award for scandalizing your child this season goes to. Maybe that's the end of the season award.
I mean, we have literally one more episode to make sure. We already got some of them set up. But hey, you never know.
There you go.
But anyway, yeah,
because there's a lot of like children saying awful things across the whole show, so that makes sense to do.
Or no, we might need to do it a bell telephone because he's calling on the phone. Well, I don't know. We'll figure that out. We got the other ones all figured out, but that's one. Anyway, that's a lot to say. This is kind of the 5G of the entire show in its own way to say, here's how people deal with problems. And it's in ways that are so unexpected. I mean, you'll see this time and again where, like I said, at the end of season 2, Don walks in, basically, I'm going to say that it's kind of inappropriate, but slams his meat on the table and just says, "This is what I do.
Yeah.
This is how I deal with things." And they're like, okay, we'll
sure.
do that. Yeah. Like, or even when he goes in on the Philip Morris pitch in season 7 when he's like, I'm prepared to leave the agency, but here's what I have to offer. And they're like, yeah, okay. Yeah. You know, like, it's just like career suicide with a gift. You know, a little like, and it's just very like, but yes, it's just like the most insane stuff. And then a version he does of that, which is fascinating, is when he does the Hershey's pitch, and it's like it's the inverse. It's like everything was good, and then you like laid it all out, and it's like, wait, what? And it's just, why is this happening? Like, so that one's a little bit different. But anyway, I guess it's important to talk about what Don's running from and what's going on here in this part of the episode. So,
real quick, so Nixon versus Kennedy aired Thursday, October 11th, 2007. Election night arrives, and the staff of Sterling Cooper has a party while watching the returns. The election is close, and it's obviously going to be a long night. Now a senior partner in the firm, Don Draper must hire a new head of account services, a post that Pete Campbell yearns for. Aware of Draper's secret past, he tries to strong-arm him into giving him the job. With his secret out, Don panics and he asks Rachel Mencken to run away with him. Regaining his composure, Don calls Pete's bluff, leading to a confrontation with Bert Cooper. Again, this is the penultimate episode. Aired October 11th. Like I said, this is directed by Alan Taylor, written by Lisa Albert and the Jack Metten couple. Again, first appearance is big one from Herman Duck Phillips, who's going to be in a lot more of season 2, but also recurs throughout here and there. Just when you forget all about it.
Well, that's what's so great about this show is even it has such a deep bench of people because it doesn't have to kill them off. You know, so it's kind of like, well, you can just have however many you need, you know.
But then there were certain characters that everyone always predicted would come back that didn't.
Right.
But
that
also feels realistic.
Right. I mean, that's what life is that you. I mean, I'll say when you have. Let's just give an example, and I like this person a lot, so I'm feeling free to say it. When you have Dwight Joplin as a keyboarding teacher in Hudson Middle School, who's quite a bit of a taskmaster, let's just say he's very heavy-handed.
Yeah.
You never imagine that, like, about 15 years later, you're going to be standing there talking to him about soccer jerseys and having to paint the field and like things that you're like, what? Like, what? You know, I would never predicted even being a coach, let alone talking to him about those things. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's like, that's life. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, you don't have, like, the same people be in your life forever. Some people are big characters. Like, season 3 particularly feels like, and it's easy for people to think this way, and I think it's the way I think about the show, is that season 3 really feels like the fulcrum of the show in the sense that before that you have the old Sterling Cooper, after that you have the Time and Life Sterling Cooper and SCDP, and you know, obviously that's totally different. And
there you have you have all these new characters that come after that, and then you got characters get left behind.
Right, so you don't have Paul, and then of course Sal. That's a whole other you know, situation. But
Paul does come back up once later on.
Yeah.
As a spec script
in the
Star Trek writer
complex. Yeah, we'll talk all about that when we get there. And there's people that are out for a little while but then come back. I think that happens with obviously it happens with Joan. Mm-hmm. Well, she kind of is just out of it part of the season.
He drops
and then
out
King
for a little
Cosgrove,
while,
he comes back. So yeah, obviously, but what I was going to say is you even have people that are like freelancers. There's that one guy, I can't remember his name, but the freelance guy. And so yeah, there's people that obviously come and go that, and even like clients too. It's weird. Not very many, but there's some that pop up again or come back, or you know.
Yeah.
But mostly that's you see them once and they're not in it again. But then you got Conrad Hilton. What a question mark that whole lifestyle is, let alone all that. Anyway, but yeah, that's just to say that Duck shows up here and then goes away and then comes back and then goes away and then comes back.
It is in the show very deep, right? Within the last few episodes,
right.
And actually has a crucial role to play with Pete, who hates him here.
Yeah. And
then later on is actually going to be his salvation in a roundabout way.
And help him out with determining who stole the Christmas card list.
Yeah. But I mean too, like him setting up in his final job.
Yeah, no, I know that. I know.
But
I was saying, well, okay, so I read, we said this last time, I read The Swimmer with my kids, and then we watched the movie, and one kid left, actually, my third block.
He walked out.
The other day.
I'm done with this. I can't stand
actually, he said, he was that kid I've said, like, I love black and white movies. You know, he was like, that movie was scary. That's what he said, and I was like,
The Swimmer?
Yeah, and I was like, you're actually kind of right.
Yeah.
But anyway, the kids are actually pretty into that compared to what you would think.
You could say conceivably to them, you loved it.
Yeah. I mean, we were laughing about that. We rewatched it like 5 or 6 times. Just that scene, not the whole movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, whenever there's a part in the story where he says they're not even on my Christmas card list, like that made me think of. He walked out one day with the electric sharpener and the Christmas card list.
Yeah. But the two most important things to get from the office.
And I don't know what. I don't know. That whole thing is. We'll get to that later. But anyway, just to say that like this show, obviously people pop back up. But like we were kind of saying, this episode's a big deal because of the idea that, and also like he wrote a lot about this. We kind of got lost in the weeds here. I can't remember what we were talking about, but I'll kind of switch something else. The way that Seitz talked about the way it talks about history and has historical moments.
Yeah, we've mentioned that before too. Yeah, that you know, to summarize Seitz's point, and we've said this before, that how this show treats historical events is very interesting because it's like sometimes sometimes you're just like going through your marriage deteriorating. And by the way, the I Have a Dream speech was had that day, and let's listen to it on the radio. And, there are times where explicitly history in real life and in the show line up, and it feels like, wow, what I'm going through in my life right now is like being matched or countermatched by whatever's going on in the news. But then other times it's very disconnected and it doesn't feel like there's a connection.
Yeah, and I think it's good to watch this because I think it's easy to forget, even though JFK told us.
November 1960, Senator John Fitzgerald Kennedy of Massachusetts wins one of the narrowest election victories in American history over the Vice President Richard Nixon by a little more than 100,000 votes.
Hopefully you could hear that, but I had it sitting here waiting.
That was just jump scared me. That was a surprise. I didn't know that was going to happen.
Because I walk around with the intro of JFK forever just burned into my head, honestly, because that's one of the greatest intros ever anyway. But anyway, yeah, that like this election, and they talk about it so much in this season, but was close. But it's easy to forget how close it was at the time if you just think, because of the way we think of Nixon now and the way we think of Kennedy now are totally different than what people would have thought of in that moment,
Yeah.
And so we just assume, Kennedy just won big, and Nixon, blah blah blah, and
Right.
But yeah, it's a good way to think about, because I love the fact they're having a party and they're like, everything's cool, and the kind of almost like we talked about before, that shattering of the consensus that would happen with Barry Goldwater in particular, and Nixon even, and Reagan especially, and but of that like consensus America of like, we don't really care who wins, we just might get the money from it, is the whole reason why they care.
Observes this, and it's always been something that I've thought about, is that this is a younger crowd of kids, not kids, but 20-somethings that are here watching the election results, and they're all cheering for Nixon, and the popular consensus of the day was, all the younger people wanted to see Kennedy win, and as you said, it's more for them about, we're like they're a client of ours, the Nixon campaign is. We've did some consulting with them, and that's really, it's more motivated by money than it is any sort of political.
And what's interesting too is how that is like the fact of that causes Paul Kinsey to sublimate his own liberalism, which shows up in some strange ways in this episode, and especially later on. In seasons 2 and 3, which Joan very directly, punctures, as being like, you don't really care about that, but
I think there is, and that's a whole relationship that honestly I sometimes wish we would have gotten more of, because I think it's an interesting contrast, but also like, I think Joan is both seeing the hypocrisy of Paul, but also like, she has no such convictions herself, and maybe feels guilty about that, because she pretty much for the course of the show has no real political convictions, I would say. I really like too.
Who knows? Maybe in the 70s she was making some like wild industrial films, like her and Herc Harvey got together and like swap spit, and we're all about let's liberate Kansas, I don't know, anyway.
She would have been more likely to be more conservative minded, like a Phyllis Schlafly, like more in line with that probably. But I really loved, and I've thought about this too, and I think Seitz articulated it very well. We've talked about this early on in the season, the whole thing of Don's the Nixon and Pete is the Kennedy, of age-wise and what they represent. Just to recap that real quick, Don, little bit of a more shadowy past, seems as though he did things on his own, not old, but older than, say, Pete is.
Yeah.
Pete, meanwhile, born with a golden spoon, like, has these familial connections. I mean, again, the very Nixon versus Kennedy divide. But then, as Seitz observes, that's not exactly actually, this episode and the next episode kind of complicate that, because actually, like, the whole, and this is something that was not known about Nixon in 1960, but by 1974 would have been on full blast. But, like, the whole idea of Pete's got the secret, he's got the secrets, and he's going to try to use them against Don, very Nixon-esque behavior.
Well, this is kind
of
like
Don is like, well, you can say whatever you want, but look how I look. and look
Yeah.
how you look. And he becomes the Kennedy,
Right.
and Pete becomes the Nixon figure, and so complicates that sliding doors,
Right.
of these associations we
and
had
he
with
kind
them.
of says that in there. I mean, but yeah, another thing too that's in, you kind of probably said this in there, is that that idea that you have Pete's the younger guy and of them, and you have all the young people at the office partying, but then he's at home stewing over like personal crap about like, it's like very like indicative of his character that he's sitting at home like, I have secrets and I don't know what to do with them. It's almost like how Nixon felt during the moon landing about the Chappaquiddick thing. It's like that he's like focused on a whole other level, like in the words of Bob Dylan, fill up the ashtrays on a whole other level of like he's just focused on whole other levels of like inside baseball nonsense.
Yeah.
Rather than like just accepting the moment for what it is.
Right.
And then Don, even in his own way, is kind of living out what he doesn't even know is the last vestiges of his lie, basically.
Yeah.
With his family, and like, I think it's funny that Sally asked him, "What's electoral college?" He's like, "I don't know. I'm not even gonna go into that."
Yeah.
Yes.
To quote, "Dad's everywhere, all across America in all eras." But
I don't even go into that. Yeah. By the way, I want to just remark upon the way that it describes on the Wikipedia article about to escape his own grotesque past. Grotesque.
It should also be said, obviously, in the flashback, this goes without saying almost, but we get the real Donald Draper introduced, and this is his only screen appearance. We don't go back to him.
Yeah. Right. The real Don. I'm sorry. I thought I heard the real Dick Whitman. I was like, well, no, he's in it. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
The real Donald Draper. Because Anna's not going to be
introduced
till season 2.
One of the great moments ever is he's like, yes. And then,
yeah, you talked about that last time, and we'll laugh about it. I know as we see it here.
And I gotta say, it's actually randomly pretty gory. His moment of death.
Yeah.
How like straight up gory it is.
Like basic Cable in 2007.
Right, and it's only for like 5 seconds. I mean, but it's still like, oh wow, that's like bad. Like the aftermath. The actual moment of it's very like wow.
Mm-hmm.
I think. What do you think of the flashback stuff in this episode, particularly, just in general?
I think it's even to rewatch it, but I remember especially the first time, it's jarring in a good way, I'd say, to his credit. John Hamm's performance of Dick Whitman versus Don Draper, because he just feels like another person.
Right.
And he feels like somebody, and you realize after seeing this how performative the Don Draper mask and facade is for him. I
feel like the experience shaped him to be that way.
Well, that was
too,
part.
Right?
No, that was no. I mean, what I mean by that is like after the fact, like he finds it easier to be. Oh, now I've got another man's name. I'm not carrying the fact that my first name was intentionally given to me to be something that actively degraded me and made me feel like a piece of trash and a piece of somebody who was not valued. I don't think we think about that enough sometimes with his character, and that's what he's running away from in terms of not just a name, but literally an identity that was shaped by his birth and what that represented to his family.
And it's something that the artists in that book, I don't remember their name, they draw pictures for every like beginning of the new season in the Carousel book.
Yeah.
That there's the one for that first season, which is of Don on the train as Don Draper, like as the ad man.
Yeah.
And in the background, the real Don Draper, and literally that's not what actually happened in the show. That's like a visual representation.
The real Don Draper, but the fake Dick Whitman. Right. Because they think that's Dick Whitman.
Yes.
And
so, like, in its own way, I think it's so fascinating. I never thought of it before I looked at it that way, of that he stepped on a train and then that was his life, was getting on and off of trains. Like, but literally him going from the farm boy to the city person like he wanted to be.
Yeah.
And the metaphor of that, I think, is pretty
I can't remember, is it this episode or the next where he finds out Adam's dead.
I think it's the next one.
Okay, I think
because
so,
that's right before the carousel.
Right,
pitch
and it
happens.
talked about that actually.
Right,
Sites did, so I
yeah.
think it is the next one. Because that's the sadness too we see within this episode is that like nobody sees him except Adam does.
Yeah,
Adam sees him on the train like as he's
and it said that in 5G when he came in.
Oh,
He's like, I
did.
saw you on the train. I
just
knew it
shows
was
that's
you,
what
and
it
you're
was.
kind of like, what? And
Yeah.
but obviously that's explained. And can you believe if that happened though? Like literally,
so
that somebody died, and he looks and he's like, wait, that's literally him, and they're like, no.
Yeah,
And he's like, and then he has to live the rest of his life thinking, I swear that was him.
and then
He
confirmed,
actually
yeah.
I mean, that's just so sad, but
Yeah.
and also just totally insane.
Yeah.
Just to think of it, that would happen. But love Uncle Mac's like acting sad face in that scene. A very like, I must.
Yeah.
Yeah. Smell my musk. But yeah.
If one thing we'll just keep saying throughout, like when he appears, like need more Uncle Mac. Like why was there not?
Seems like he's. Other than being like a pimp, he's not really that bad of a guy, I guess. Well, literally, Don says he was nice to me.
Yeah.
Which is sad that his own, and even his real mother, but like his own father and his, other mother. By the way, it just occurred to me. You know who Archibald Whitman looks like? I think is Eric Bischoff, kind of.
Oh yeah.
Now I'm gonna just think of him as Eric Bischoff. But anyway.
Also, I'm gonna look this up. The guy that plays Archibald Whitman, he had some role in the Corman Fantastic Four movie that that crappy Fantastic Four movie that got made years ago.
Yeah.
Let me look that up real quick. I can't remember if he was. It was unreleased. Yeah. Let's see. If he was. I think he was. Yeah, Joseph Culp is that actor's name. He played Dr. Doom in that, by the way.
Yeah.
So, any other big things before we get into this episode?
No, I think we're good.
One thing I do want to read, because we've talked about it a lot here and there, and we'll think about it again as we see it. The opening credits of the show. I think Sites had some, and I think this is something that you can't exactly observe until the show's totally over when we see what happened with Don, because there was so much pontification as far as like what that represented or meant. And in this dual essay that he writes for these two episodes, I just want to read a little bit from this. Opening credits, Madman. A black and white caricature of a man in a suit falls through a full-color cityscape comprised of advertising signifiers, logos, graphic elements, a suicidal image, maybe a fantasy, maybe a figurative visualization of the man's state of mind. He puts down his suitcase and jumps, falling vertically, then suddenly is seen from below. He flies towards the camera. Blackness swallows the frame. Screen direction is reversed. Zoom out to reveal the same man seated on a couch as seen from the back, still, calm, in control, cigarette burning. He almost destroyed himself, until he didn't. Everything fell apart. It's all still there. Some viewers thought this sequence was predicting the end of the series or the end of a particular character's life. But at the end of Season 1, these end credits are more useful and more interesting as a wordless expression or visualization of what Don keeps doing to himself, or what life keeps doing to Don. 3 times this season at least, Don throws himself away, then doesn't. Everything falls apart, but it's all still there. Then he says, go back and look at 2 slides from earlier Season 1 and you'll see what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I think, there's a lot of that opening credits have been interpreted so many ways, and I think that, again, as we know that Don didn't commit suicide, he didn't die, but that whole idea of running away, of all this internal struggle, but then that just being actually background noise to that confident visage of Don Draper just sitting on the couch confidently smoking, I think it's a brilliant summation of the kind of that character and how that opening credits features in the show.
I think that's a good way to describe that. Speaking of opening credits,
privately claims the CIA lied to him and tried to manipulate him.
So just something I think about. Anyway,
so before we get into the episode, I'm going to show Levi. I haven't showed him yet. We here at not Overlapping Dialogue, at Blow and Smoke, we at Huffman Brothers Productions in general, we believe that both sides of the argument need to have their say made. So we're going to play you little clips from both Senator John F. Kennedy and Vice President Richard Nixon, so they can make their final pitches as to why they deserve to be President of the United States.
This historic moment is brought to you by Citizens for Kennedy.
As I said at the beginning, the question before us all, that faces all Republicans and all Democrats, is, can freedom in the next generation conquer, or are the communists going to be successful? That's the great issue. And if we meet our responsibilities, I think freedom will conquer. If we fail to move ahead, if we fail to develop sufficient military and economic and social strength here in this country, then I think that the tide could begin to run against us. And I don't want historians 10 years from now to say, these were the years when the tide ran out for the United States. I want them to say, these were the years when the tide came in. These were the years when the United States started to move again. That's the question before the American people, and only you can decide what you want this country to be, what you want to do with the future. I think we're ready to move, and it is to that great task, if we're successful, that we will address ourselves.
Here is President Eisenhower's decision on who is best qualified to follow him in the White House.
Dick Nixon is superbly experienced, maturely conditioned in the critical affairs of the world. For 8 years, he has been a full participant in the deliberations that have produced the great decisions affecting our nation's security and have kept us at peace. He has shared more intimately in the great affairs of government than any vice president in all our history. He has traveled the world, studying at firsthand the hopes and the needs of more than 50 nations. He knows in person the leaders of those nations, knowledge of immeasurable value to a future president. By all odds, Richard Nixon is the best qualified man to be the next president of the United States.
Along with the president, all America is going for Nixon and Lodge. Vote for them on November 8th. They understand what peace demands.
Yeah. All right, so the choice is yours, America. I'll let you decide as you see fit. Oh, by the way, they're both dead, and the election is long gone. So
also, like, that one, the Nixon-Eisenhower thing was a straight-up lie. Because we know what he said.
Yeah, I mean, that was earlier in the season where he was like, oh, if you gave me a moment, I'd have to think about how he was instrumental in big decisions.
Straight-up lies. That's like that Frank Capra lies.
Oh, yeah.
Like, moment.
All right, so we're watching it on the Blu-ray, hitting play in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
By the way, just to let everyone know, Chelsea just beat Liverpool 3-1, just beat the champions.
So does that have anything to do with Chelsea moving up or down the leaderboard at all?
Yeah, based on how the other teams
Where are they
play.
currently sitting?
They're at 5th right now, although they probably went up based on this game. Although a lot of games were played yesterday, so I'm assuming it won't be affected too much. Yeah, that was the last game of today, so let's see where they are. Still at 5th. But that's because other teams won, so they at least penciled this in as a loss, though, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so LOL.
Stay in line.
Yeah.
Oh, Bert Cooper's doing his Bert Cooper thing.
Herman Phillips, Bert Cooper. Actually, Herman goes on my checks. People call me Duck. My research says I was not to call you Duck. You should have told me that. I don't know. I like when you say Herman. Herman was in London with Y&R.
Isn't this a step down?
I don't know. Moving back to the power center of the universe, New York, and the chance to put on some weight. English.
This actor's got such a good, distinctive voice.
Yeah. He worked with Oliver Stone actually quite a few times.
Yeah.
Spend money to make money.
So you're not promising anything?
Martin Moses.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
What a name, too.
Mark Moses.
I hope you play your cards close to the vest with clients.
I will keep that in mind.
Here's a test. Who'd you vote for?
If I say Nixon, you'll think I'm buttering you.
I'm buttering you.
You'll want to reform me, so I'll say Nixon.
That's nice to say.
I know Sites pointed out that like
smiled 5 different times. Like
he's like, "What is this? The guy I'm friggin' working for? Who the hell is he?"
Waldorf is 6 o'clock. March told me. 23 skidoo. At 6:15, we turn on the returns and send for some ice. Party at the in-laws. Now they're ending to a perfect day. Well, Jennifer and I were going to get tickets to Can. It's empty, you know. She says apparently the phone company is a war zone on election night. That's what I'm hoping for around here. Although you better hope that she's sitting at her switchboard.
That was instead of everybody posting about it on social media, they just call.
Besides, what if Nixon loses?
Call up everybody.
Things around here. Who cares? They didn't want our help. You should care. I do. It matters for the nation and for Sterling too. But tonight, either way, if Nixon wins, we win. If Nixon loses, let me console you.
All right, they're gonna start making out like.
And he's like, no, and I mean it as in me.
Yeah.
Like he's like, oh.
Pete's like, Duck Phillips. He's worming his way into my spot.
I grew up with a tuck. At least that has an air of dignity.
Don't listen to Cooper. That's a first. I heard he disintegrated in London. Got involved with some woman he met at the British Museum. It's Rosetta Stone.
No, they're just making all this up. Basically.
Yeah. He's divorced, lives in a hotel. Like
His last stop.
He's a killer, but he's damaged goods. They're bargain hunting. He's the best.
that moment.
Dude, this
like,
whole
I will watch.
yeah.
Like
Let the boy watch.
Can I help you?
What?
Can I help you? Mr. Campbell would like to see you.
This is some of Peggy's last hours as a secretary.
last hours as a real human being. Is I thought you were gonna say like what? Personal papers and sundries.
When Don passes away, who's going to get his papers?
Yeah.
Like what, museum or library?
He's just like moving on.
He's like the friggin' Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
Listen, Don. I don't feel you've taken me seriously as a candidate.
She said, "You're right."
Candidate for what?
For the head of account services. We may have had our differences, but Roger knows.
I think I should be department chair.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I have the loyalty of our most important clients. Calvin Highland, Lee Garner. These men trust me. They invite me to their grandchildren's christenings. When Walter Vike needed a urologist, he called me for a recommendation.
Look, you're good at your job. Cooper loves you.
He's like, that's because you know a lot about peen.
Yeah.
Is that supposed to persuade me?
I have tremendous value to this company. I'm aware of that. But I don't think you are.
I am. I just hope you realize that the way things stand, they will continue to be someone senior to you.
Why? What can they offer? All I'm asking is
That you want to explode on the launch pad?
Yeah.
Cooper sign off on what's his name? Duck.
I'll keep you posted.
I'll keep
It's
you
toasted.
posted.
What?
Yeah.
Like, I'll keep you toasted. It's posted. It's post-it note. Post-it note on your crotch. Whatever that means in this situation.
Got a big lead. See if the victory party.
Who, Duck?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good night, Don.
And they're all like, all right.
He's gone. Ollie, oxen free.
One of the most cringe phrases of all time. I've always thought.
I don't even know what it means. Like,
All right, let's do some Googling. The phrase "Ollie Ollie oxen free" likely originates as a playful corruption of "all ye, all come free," used in a game of hide and seek. Sounds like some thing that originated in Britain in like 1600 or something.
Yeah.
Soften up a bit. I have a bottle of absinthe in my office.
Isn't that illegal?
It's marvelous.
absinthe.
I'm incantatory.
And what does that mean?
Means he starts making up words. Can someone freshen this?
They're not going to make it.
Really? If I let you into that supply closet, it is not going to be the sack of rum.
What do we have too much of?
There's a whole lot in literature and the arts section on the Wikipedia page.
Meanwhile, like somebody can't just go out and buy some liquor, you know?
Yeah. Madman is not represented here, but it's...
They're going to break it.
They're doing that.
Doing meth.
Who the president is going to be?
Wow, what a mom.
What parents, you know?
At least he tells her what... Oh, wait, never mind. He gives up on that. But at least...
never mind, he sucks.
Yeah, it's like, at least he... Oh, well... At least he got her a poly doggy.
Yeah.
Mom said it was okay. I'm watching the news.
Nixon definitely won our precinct. You should have seen the line.
Mommy said to ask you, what's the...
Electoral college.
I don't think that's a conversation appropriate for children.
What, like she's gonna go on the playground? Like, so my dad was telling me
almost
about the
like
electoral
almost
college.
like he was talking to her too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Nonsense.
Come here. Run.
Oh, sexual harassment.
Yeah, this
oh,
is
haha.
Really pathetic. Flo is like, I'm not into this.
Yeah.
Find out what color panties you wearing.
Wow. Just unbelievable.
Sal yucking it up too.
I mean, not to be too, you know, but he's probably wearing something like it. So.
Well, the trend's catching on.
Yeah.
I'm going to go home. No, don't go. It's going to be fun.
No, it's not.
Now, actually, who do you think? It probably wouldn't be Sal. Who would be the person in the room right now who would have their pants pulled down and they'd be wearing a thong a la Jonathan Coachman in WWE?
I mean, Harry wouldn't be, I don't think, the worst guess.
What a literal shocking moment.
This, by the way, is like, was Pete just straight up lying about, oh, I'm with the in-laws, or did that fall through, or was he just saying that just to get out of staying at the office? Like, I'm thinking about blackmailing.
Why aren't you asleep?
Blackmailing my op.
Why aren't you asleep? Myrna.
My father has a box like that, and I looked at it when I was a little girl, and it was a mistake.
So you didn't open it?
Peter, I don't want secrets.
So what secrets is her dad holding, you know?
Can't sleep.
I know. I've seen it the last few weeks.
So has he had it that long?
Yeah.
Every time I see the closet doors open,
Yeah, commonly episodes between this show happen usually 2 to 3 weeks between each other.
What are you doing with it?
I got it by mistake.
So give it back. It's peculiar. It's not yours.
You're right. I'll give it to Bert.
Yeah. I give it to Ernie. I mean Bert, whatever his name is. Hey, Bert and Ernie. Like, shut up. You know, like, cut the crap, like.
You're a liar. I couldn't find any absinthe. Who said you could go in my office? We were exploring. But all we found was a large collection of Mad magazines and this fascinating dramatic piece. Death is my client. A play in one act by Paul Kinsey. Peter Tollefson. Oh, an animal in the boardroom.
I love it. Cuts to that. To all right, let's just stage the thing.
Yeah, and he's got his He's like got his director's attire on now.
No one wants to be caught.
Oh, and obviously
you don't want to be caught.
There's a lot of Rand stuff in this
Yeah.
season. Obviously, that's the main character.
Yeah.
John Galt is of Atlas Shrugged.
I worked with Tolson for 4 years. I shared everything, but I never knew him. I thought I knew him. He used to talk to me.
I can't control my genius. I'm not some boyish natural like that hack Cosgrove.
He's like, don't laugh.
Yeah.
Like,
He's like, this is serious art.
Yeah.
You can make anyone buy anything. Anyone but me.
We need to put this on in a community theater somewhere around here.
Yeah. There's probably somebody who's written the whole thing.
Yeah. You see that little glint in his eyes? Like,
Yeah.
yes, art. It's true, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
We get a little bit of indication here. Joan, after she kissed Sal,
Yeah.
like, he didn't seem like he was into it. Meanwhile,
hell?
that Harry Crane dance might be an instant L right there.
Well, there's some other people I think are gonna pretty much lose this episode pretty definitively.
Yeah, he
And
doesn't
one of
have a
them-
good one either, though.
One of them's not alive. So Mr. Nixon's purse. Like he's a woman. Like he's a gay man. It's like, okay.
I wonder if there's any was Nixon gay truthers out there. It's just like,
Yeah, I think you're picking the wrong bingo card on that one.
Yeah.
man.
he'd been more likely to have been an asexual, even though he fathered children.
I love we're really prolonging this moment.
Yeah.
Like it really means something.
Yeah, very clearly.
Him without his glasses is like, whoa,
Yeah.
put that thing away.
Yeah.
Like, put that thing away. They're like, children here.
Harry's got his crane out, like. Or Crane's got his Harry out, whichever way you want.
I think Harry's got his crane out.
Yeah.
Better, but or just Harry Crane, literally, like, is just there now.
What's going on?
I don't know. Should be alright in the morning. It would count. Turn it off.
Obviously, a big deal. This is the first, a lot of firsts in the 1960 election. It was one of the first ones that was really covered on TV in a big, big way.
Yeah.
Where usually people just go to sleep and then whatever the paper said the next morning was like what the answer was.
You're not gonna call me Orson Welles again. You wouldn't like that.
Tell he definitely,
Yeah.
he thinks he is like. He does kind of look like early Orson Welles.
Yeah. No one wants to be caught. It's gonna be my new saying. Like, no one wants to be caught.
I'm not proud of it. Did you like your play? The meaner you are, the more I like you.
I know.
Of all the guys Jones been with in this show, he feels like one of the more unlikely ones.
Mm-hmm.
She gives him grief later, kind of guilt trips him for dating his black girlfriend that he has in next season. That guy's just so out of it.
He might literally be dead. Yeah.
Obi, wake up.
It's cold in here.
It is. You have to get dressed. Can't find my glasses.
It's too bad.
Tremendous.
Thankfully, that's never happened to me. Cheating in an office with somebody's not your wife, but the glasses breaking into them.
I hope I didn't step on them. There's an optometrist on Lexington.
Right. Horse.
More worried about that than getting caught at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to be worried. It didn't mean anything, okay?
Harold Crane.
Geraldo Crane.
Yeah. Heraldrick Crane.
Heraldrick.
Heraldrick Crane.
Meanwhile,
Heraldrick Cranathan.
Peggy's like, yeah, it's Roman Catholics. We get the job done.
Yeah. Heraldrick Cranathan. Like.
Oh my god. That looks so bad.
Not drinking for taste. Don't be such babies.
Oh, God. It's definitely not helping.
I'm sorry. Did I offend you?
Yeah, like SOB. Like. He's the only one whose hair looks kind of alright.
Yeah.
My shirt. And my Mad Money. Who did this?
Mad Money. What's that mean?
I had $3.
I don't know.
$3? You keep your voice down.
You're gonna come up with Howard Kramer show.
Yeah, that's.
Striking with them. That's too proper.
There's a 1869 Russian play called Mad Money.
Maybe it's referring to like money for the cart or something.
Could be.
Read 3 different newspapers.
Mad money generally refers to a sum of money kept in reserve for discretionary spending, often for impulse or frivolous purposes, or to be a safety net in a relationship breakdown.
Dang.
Luminary. Say MacArthur and Jesus. There's been widespread fraud. Daly gave Joe Kennedy every corpse in Cook County. Otherwise, Nixon.
Which is in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Should have been that close.
Which Illinois is one of the big swing states then.
Those jingles. When they got Frank Sinatra, I knew they would close the gap.
So what does he do now? Walk away and see.
A recount in Illinois alone means 30 days without a president. You don't want to win like that.
But you won't win.
He got 50% of the vote, maybe more. This way he lives to see another day.
So, what happens?
Neil from P&G said if Kennedy is willing to buy an election, he's probably willing to play ball with us.
I love what Don says here.
The optimism of the American corporation.
It's a football game to them.
Doesn't seem fair.
Very good.
Yeah. Like he's like fairness. I like that. Like,
but I love to. It's like, well, whatever.
Yeah.
But I will still make money.
Mad Money.
If I were you, I would be very, very careful from now on about the way you speak to me.
That's literally one of the most chilling things I think anyone's ever said to anybody.
This is the opening salvo right here.
Yeah.
What's that? It's yours. Came to me.
Donald Draper.
Burl Isles Don Draper.
Have you reconsidered my qualifications?
Disappoint you if I told you it hadn't crossed my mind.
Lowe's, I'm giving you one more chance. Like,
That's like his moment to make the choice.
Yeah.
And he goes for hope.
I feel strange having to talk to you in this way.
Spit it out, Campbell.
I know that your name is not Don Draper. It's Dick Whitman.
That you have my full attention. Like,
But according to my friend Rob,
his tits are at attention, if you know what I mean.
in 1950, and Donald Draper dropped off the map. Although he's 43 years old, in which case you look remarkably good.
That's kind of elaborate.
Really? I wish I knew more.
you want to tell me?
I bet a lot of people do.
Pete, get out. You're making a fool of yourself.
You can deny it. I know it's true.
I know I think it's hilarious. His first piece of decision making is get out. Like,
Yeah.
that's it. Like,
How Bert Cooper will react when he hears this information.
What information?
You're not.
I'm just going to go into blind denial mode.
Come on.
I would like you to reconsider my qualifications.
You said everything except or else. Assuming this information is true, which it isn't, it sounds to me like you're blackmailing.
I'm not. I'm hoping you'll realize that this all can be forgotten. It's not like you're a deserter, is it?
When you threaten someone in this manner, you should be aware of the fact that if your information is powerful enough to make them do what you want, what else can I make them do?
It's like, you're going to drive me over the edge.
It's not a threat, it's just a job.
He's like, just give me the job?
do the job. Yeah. Do the job.
Give me the job.
Do the job. No, you're going to have to turn this opportunity yes.
I love one of his ticks when he's like, oh gosh, he blinks a lot.
Yeah.
John Hamm.
No, I think you're going to just have to turn this opportunity yes. Oh my God. His papers. His things.
Yeah.
His quote-unquote goodie bag.
Because this box obviously plays a big role later throughout the show, but I guess this is the first time that he's getting his hands on it because originally it was Adams anyways, and he was meant to send him.
Whitman!
What is this?
This is it.
One? I'm supposed to have 20. This is going to take a month. It should take 48 hours.
You're whining to the wrong guy, sir.
Well, it was just shot in California somewhere, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, no one really knows what Korea looks like anyway.
After all the time MASH was shot, obviously in California too.
I mean, no one knows what Korea looks like anyway.
Yeah.
For officers. You can buy the next one. I'd introduce you to the men, but you're looking at the complete company.
Where's everybody, sir?
They were gone when I got here.
You love the John Hamm like Dick Whitman voice.
Where
like,
are they?
Yeah.
Where's everybody? Where's everybody at?
The answer is no. The one who stopped short unit, that's you, will be establishing a field hospital, but first...
Literally MASH.
Mm-hmm.
Four sides. What are you doing here? Are you poor?
Volunteer.
You're kidding me. Well, they got me with college. But I'm 3 years, 6 months, nearly a civilian. I'm supposed to be building swimming pools, not latrines. You any good with that rifle? I wouldn't want you to mistake me for Chinese.
As much practice as I've had. Yes.
It's very poetic and fitting that this whole character is one of its inciting incidents and is born out of the Korean War, which is one of the most like forgotten about, cast aside conflicts in American history, specifically in between World War II and Vietnam.
What's darkly comedic? He's like, well, I bet you're reconsidering. He's like, no, I'm not.
Well, why don't you go hang out with my stepmom?
Yeah.
You'll see.
Who do you call with a situation like this?
Miss Lincoln, Mr. Draper is here to see you.
Please hold my calls.
This does has one of the more comical lines, like Adam and Eve coming up. Like,
oh yeah, and she's like, what? It's almost like he's like, what's the one thing I can say that can appeal to a Jew? Like, it was like, what?
Let's have ourselves an exodus.
Anywhere.
Warmer weather?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Los Angeles. Mexico. I have money.
I have money, but I have a store to run.
I have money. You got money, honey. Don, are you well?
No, I'm not.
Did something else happen to Roger?
Oh yeah, him.
He's like, what? Like,
It happened, and I want to go, and I want you to come with me, and I don't want to come back.
What happened?
What does it matter? Isn't this what you want?
Of course. I've thought about it. My God, we've talked about it. I just didn't think it would happen. I mean, especially this way.
I just don't want to be without you, and I don't want to be here.
I can't just leave.
one of my favorite lines is, "There's nothing here."
Yeah.
Like,
and again, it goes without saying, obviously, but his gut instinct is not to go see his wife, or like, he's like, no, to go with his
No, this isn't how I
woman he's having an affair on
Difference.
or with.
We'll go somewhere else. We'll start over like Adam and Eve.
What are you, 15 years old? My father. Can't we be together?
He's like, don't you get it? Like,
there's nothing here.
What about your children?
I'll provide for them.
He's like, that's what people want me to say.
My God, you haven't thought this through. I feel sick.
You're wrong. I know exactly what I want.
You want your children to go on without a father? You know how that felt?
Are you having an attack of conscience? After all this?
No. I'm watching you talk because I feel I don't know you.
You know more about me.
that's such extreme things to say. His hair still looks good, I'll say that.
Why are you doing this to me? And what kind of man are you? Go away.
He's like, I don't know.
Leave your wife?
Neil Macaulay kind of deal.
This was a dalliance. A cheap affair. You don't want to run away with me. You just want to run away. You're a coward.
You're a deserter
Yeah.
of your life. Not anything else, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, that is kind of the moment he kind of looked at her like, oh, yeah.
I wonder if that's part of it. It's like he's like, no, this time I will stay and fight. Like, is the psychological thing going on there? Clearly, he would have left with her if she wanted to, but then he would have likely just went and did his usual thing after that. But
an all-time moment coming up right here. We were laughing about it a while ago when we were testing.
Oh, yeah.
Just the all the situations he's dealing with, and then. Do the doors mean nothing to you? Jim Morrison's in his glow up era right now. He's going to be in his blow up era later on. And I don't mean the Antonioni film. Calm down.
Stop it. I didn't mean to yell at you. Gotta be some semblance of privacy left here.
Let's get away from them all for a minute.
Privacy. Privacy.
Here, load up. It ain't like you're pregnant or nothing.
You ever heard of that drug, Privacy?
Privacy.
You switched the samples, didn't you?
Somebody from the elevator. And some janitor, I don't know his name. They got fired.
That's why you're crying?
It was my fault. I called security. They weren't even here last night.
He's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Literally, like, yeah, I need to be alone right now.
That look.
I don't understand. I tried to do my job.
Oh, this is what pushes him over the edge, actually.
And people hate me.
Oh, yes, they hate me too.
People get hurt. And other people who are not good, get to walk around doing whatever they want.
Actually, it was funny. She's really talking about him.
Yeah.
But he's like, oh, it's Pete, you know. Finish it.
I will finish him.
But then he probably thinks, yeah, you're talking about the doorman, aren't you?
Yeah.
Like. Good lighting in that shot.
But yeah, you're right. Like, she's essentially describing him.
Yeah, and he's like, I must do what must be done.
Yeah.
I must. This is his moment. Oh, he's just sitting there waiting.
Yeah.
He doesn't knock.
The light's off, too.
Thought about what you said.
Glad to hear it.
And then I thought about you. I want a deep lack of
And then I thought about you. What a deep lack of character you have.
Understand your frustration, Don. Believe me, I'm not enjoying this any more than you.
I'm hiring Doc Phillips.
I think you are kind of enjoying it, actually.
Don't make me go to Cooper.
I'm not making you do anything.
Yeah.
You haven't thought this through.
I have.
Really? You're just going to go up to the office and tell Bert Cooper?
I have to. I don't want to.
Let me ask you. How do you think he'll react when you tell him this story of yours? Expect him to promote you? After the way you behaved?
After the way you behaved.
You haven't thought this through.
I don't know. But I'm pretty sure you won't be working here.
Yeah, let's go find out.
That little walk past, like.
You gotta love those.
Oh, that he had a little like head turn there.
There's literal or figurative. Let's go to the principal's office.
Yeah.
Like,
Where are you going? I'm going to take care of this right now. Is this the sort of thing like in the movies where I have a gun?
It's funny, everybody else just doing their day
in the middle of all this.
Yeah.
So you would rather blow yourself up than make me head of accounts?
His answer.
He's like, yes.
I love they have to take their shoes off though.
Yeah,
know,
like
yeah.
He's like going by.
What I want. I've earned this job. I deserve it.
Why? Because your parents are rich? Because you went to prep school and a $5 haircut?
I've seen this in a Pete Campbell fan cam before this opening here.
I'm giving you a way out. Would it be so bad?
He went. Kennedy wins.
Yeah, like I said, it's funny. We got the shoes off before.
Oh, excuse me, by the way. Yeah.
Well.
Drown your sorrows. I'm not really much of a drinker. No, I just wanted to say. I'm pulling the trigger on Doc Phillips as new head of account services.
Pulling the trigger.
Well done.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Anyway.
So do you have something you'd
Let me
like to
trim
say?
my bonsai.
Yeah.
That if I kept it from you, in the end it would be damaging to Sterling Cooper. It has come to my attention, completely by accident.
Well, kind of accident, not completely. Meanwhile, Herbert Hoover, picture in the background.
Yeah.
So, arch capitalist.
Can you imagine what's going through Bert's mind at this point, though? He's like, what?
He's like, this is interesting.
I'll put this in my memoirs.
Yeah.
As I trim
we
my
got
bonsai.
we got some of Roger's memoirs. We didn't get any. That was Calvin Coolidge in the background.
Yeah, I knew there was another one. I wasn't sure who it was. That little
He's like, man, I love the 20s.
Campbell, who cares?
Even he's shocked.
Yeah.
What? Mr. Cooper, he's a fraud and a liar. A criminal even.
A criminal even.
Even if this were true, who cares? This country was built and run by men with worse stories than whatever you imagined here.
I'm not imagining anything.
The Japanese have a saying, a man is whatever room he is in. And right now, Donald Draper is in this room. I assure you, there's more profit in forgetting this. I put your energy into bringing in accounts.
The paintings in the
Like
background.
Don's got this very particular expression of yeah. It's just like I don't know how he's ready.
It's also kind of creepy that he'll remember that when it comes to the contract moment in later seasons when he's like
holding that over his head. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
It's like, yeah. And that's his first lesson, is to say, no, we will remember, but, to our benefit.
Yeah, he's playing chess for sure.
Lieutenant, what do we do? Keep your head. Don't shoot at anything unless it shoots at you first.
Well, they're shooting at you, so. How'd you make it this long?
What, the war? Like,
Time to smoke.
We didn't shoot back.
I ain't smoked in a whole 45 seconds.
You pissed yourself. What?
crap.
Here we go.
Yeah. What a hilarious moment. Like, oh, just
every
so
time I
funny.
rewatch this in my memory, they spent more time together.
Yeah.
But it's like there's literally 2 scenes in the show.
Crap.
Well, 2.5 scenes, I guess.
Yeah. 2.5 bodies, I guess.
citizens of the United States of America.
Truman.
Yeah. Is this all Truman's fault? Like,
I present you with this Purple Heart medal.
Concussion was minor. You'll feel like yourself in a week.
it's not very conveniently. You have no scars to speak of. Not any on the outside, that is.
Yeah.
We're releasing you to the reserves for your last 80 days. You're going home.
So I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
He saw the chance to make it happen in 1950.
Yeah. So that's pretty bad for like 2007 AMC.
Yeah.
Private Whitman, you were the last person who knew him in his chain of command. We'd like you to take him home.
Oh, I can't make it.
I think it would mean something. On behalf of the President of the United States, and the citizens of the United States of America,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess it's just probably kind of funny that like Roger's always like, Lieutenant, huh?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. Like,
yeah.
Like he's like, oh, he's secretly jealous of him about being
he
lieutenant,
outranks
and he's
him.
just like, well, I didn't really do anything. He played a real like hitman, like gets in a new outfit, like to hide vibes, like.
And it's like, oh, his first romance? Like, is the note that ends on here.
Yeah.
Just go. I can't. Okay.
There he is! I see him!
Who?
See? He's on the train. I see him.
He's right here.
But I saw him. I saw him in the window.
Stop it. No more of that. It must be hard for you. Did you know him?
Hello?
You got your whole life ahead of you. Forget that boy in the box.
Thus is born the Don Draper ethos. Even the origin story of that.
Mm-hmm.
The trains, it's interesting that, you know, the first time we had any indication he wasn't who he said he was on a train when that random guy earlier in the season identified him as Dick Whitman. Or Dick, he called him.
He did say Dick Whitman.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. No, it was on a train, too.
Yeah.
It's funny, like if years later somebody was talking to Don at a bar, that's the natural assumption, or a movie theater anywhere. It's like, oh, where were you in the 1960 election? What was going on with you? He's like, I was scandalizing my life. Like,
yeah.
kind of ends on a whimper there.
Yeah.
Don coming back home. But what is home to Don Draper? Will we ever really know that answer? So,
Carbonara.
That is, of course, Nixon versus Kennedy. One of the highlights of season 1 for sure. Memorable for a great many reasons. All right, Levi, we'll dive into our awards for this episode. So, what do we got first?
First is the Lucky Strike Championship for who won the episode. I'm going to give the first one to you, Kyle.
It's toasted.
I'm gonna maybe this is the obvious choice. I'm gonna go with Don here, not necessarily because of everything great happens for his character, but just that yet again it's like this is another big piece of his story in terms of being confronted with this, and also the flashbacks we get that fill in more gaps of his character. And John Hamm's performance has to modulate between a lot of various moods and pieces here, I feel like. So I'm going to go with Don Draper on this one.
Part of me wants to go Don. I think I'm going to go Burt on this. Because
you're a big fan of Calvin Coolidge and Herbert Hoover as well.
Hoover, no. I actually think Calvin Coolidge is probably a worse president than Herbert Hoover, but I think just his mastery of the situation to just be like, nah, we're not really going to deal with that way, so no. And also by just spelling out a kind of something that I don't totally believe in, but is a certain amount of truth to, is like, well, whatever, it's all just about money anyway. So,
right.
And like, kind of shrugging.
No, it's definitely one of the signature Burt Cooper moments is that scene for sure. Yeah, I get that.
So I'm going to go with Burt on that one. So you chose Don Draper for Lucky Strike. I chose Burt Cooper. Secor Laxative Award for who lost the episode.
Every commercial block on air in the land of Lincoln is clogged up with laxative buys.
Roger can't lose it this time.
Yeah.
You had him losing it 2 times in a row. I had him the last time, or the second to last time that I had Betty.
Mm-hmm. Who are you going with on this one?
I mean, it seems obvious, but we got to go Pete on this one.
I'm also going to go with Pete.
Explain.
Obviously, he thinks he's got it all figured out. He thinks he can outmaneuver. And again, we've been talking about this, especially in the last episode. He's constantly maneuvering to better himself, that he thinks he's earned and deserved his spot in the office. And imagine like having something you think is the big grand piece of the puzzle that's going to get you to where you need to go, and immediately being met with a who cares as a response. Like, it just totally deflates Pete. And he very well may lose the next episode too, based on some things I know that happened in that. We'll see. Probably not actually, but we'll see. But so I mean, it is obvious. I think Don, for me, the Don and Pete of this episode is very, very obvious. Although I think Burt makes a lot of sense for winning it as well. But Pete, he just, and it's one of those things, like, it's not a public embarrassment to everyone else in the office. This is just something really him, Burt, and Don knew about. Well, except his wife to an extent. I will say Pete gets a little bit of points for being like, nah, I don't want to be here for the party. Like, I want to be outside of this. But Pete Campbell just, again, this, especially in this season, this ultimately signifies, like, for him this season, like, the gutter of his hopes and dreams that he thinks he's owed turning out to be rebuffed in the same way that, as we said earlier, Don trying to get rid of Pete earlier in the season was rebuffed, and it kind of creates a sum-zero situation between Don and Pete here, but ultimately, obviously, in the immediate, Don has the upper hand on Pete there.
I agree with all that. The only thing I'll add is that he doesn't get a farewell moment in this episode like Don does. After this happened, Don gets to have his reminiscence and to go home. It's literally almost a implication of he's writing the narrative.
Yes.
Like, ultimately, and it's like Pete doesn't even get that farewell moment of a failure,
Yeah.
He does a little bit in the next episode.
Yeah.
But, I think that's just very telling.
Mm-hmm.
So, Pete Campbell, Secor Laxative Award winner or loser, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
All right, Mohawk Airlines plaque I have actually both of mine sewed up pretty tight, but Mohawk Airlines plaque for most shocking event, moment.
I'm sorry, am I bothering you?
What's going on?
I just got off the phone with my brother. It's the strangest thing. Apparently my father was on that plane.
What?
Line of dialogue in the episode. There's a lot. Mine was pretty definitive, though.
I think for me, it's got to be just the fact that Don Draper's a deserter of the Korean War, because that just the revelation of that falling into place, that we knew he was some Korean War veteran, but we weren't exactly sure who. And that
Dick/Don deserter.
That's fine.
Because,
because just like, again, that flies in the face of this self-made, cooler than a cucumber persona he's created, that we see his ultimate, I think in his whole life, ultimate moment of weakness in terms of not even just that he stole a man's identity, but, and we get more gaps on this later, but that what he was running away from was what compelled him to do that in the first place. The dishonor of that, the sadness of that, and just the whole, that is also, it now introduces into the narrative in a more clear, direct way a possibility of judgment that will hang over him the rest of the show that never quite comes to fruition, but is going to be used here and there as a possibility of his undoing, even though that's not ultimately what happens. But that teasing of that begins now in a fundamental way, now that that's been revealed. And not only does Pete know, but it's been told to Burr, and it has a risk of larger implications. So that whole idea of Don as a deserter and his history of, the real Don Draper dying and him stealing his identity.
Yeah, that's a good one, a big one. Mine's very simple. I put it as AMC 2007 explosion. I'm just like, wow. Or even, kind of, let's just throw into that the real Donald Draper's charred body is just very... I feel like that's like a weird kind of thing that has an obvious purpose, which is to explain he literally wasn't able to be identified, as being that only makes possible the whole situation that he could do that, and so but just the crap, and the way his body arches forward, anyway, so haha, lol. Anyway. Those are our Mohawk Airlines plaques, for both of them having to do with Don Draper being a deserter and the explosion. All right. Patchy Palm for best cultural reference of the episode.
This is Patchy.
Got to go with my boy Orson Welles on this one. Obviously, Paul.
Mine also has to do with this, but not in the same way.
But Paul Kinsey, specifically, I want you to mention Paul Kinsey's resemblance to Orson Welles. Because that immediately, I know, like the inner life of Paul Kinsey is not one of the guiding questions of this show, but it does kind of for us establish, and I think also a more smug version of this show would have made Paul Kinsey randomly the protagonist of it. And what I mean by that is, he's deep down an old school New Deal liberal who is on the cusp of being this beat who's going to see all this change over the course of the show. And the show's told from this more writerly perspective in terms of his ideas on the advertising agency and and it'd be more of a satirical show about what a sham it is to believe one thing and sell another. And so randomly, I feel like that's actually all wrapped up in what we see of the Kinsey in this episode of his play and how he thinks of himself.
Right.
I'm not saying I wanted that to be the version of the show, because I think that would have been a far worse version.
Yeah.
But I do think that randomly that establishes who Paul Kinsey thinks and wishes he was. And again, I know he's not in like the top 7 or 8 characters of this entire show, but that is a little bit of a window almost into a whole other world of what this show could have been had it been the Paul Kinsey show, which I'm glad it's not, but I do think he's a valuable contribution to the early seasons in terms of establishing I'm someone who knows better than the work in advertising, and yet I do. and that that whole so it might be very wordy and arch, but that's what I mean by that.
Mine is no one wants to be Galt. Like, just what I think's funny is it's almost like the even Weiner himself or the more like liberal writers of the show saying nobody Galt, this whole Galt thing is just BS.
Well, who wants to be Burt Cooper?
Right. No one wants to be Galt.
Yeah.
And then everybody wants to be Galt. Like,
who is John Galt? I'm John Galt. Remember that?
I like Galt.
That Atlas Shrugged movie that got made years ago, and the producers or whatever had
like
people
3 parts to it or whatever.
Yeah, it's like so long. It's like all these random people they asked, "Hey, fans of Atlas Shrugged." This is so dumb to say. To look at another person in the eyes and say this all out loud. That literally they had people volunteer who is John Galt? I am John Galt readings, and then it got put together. So, do you have one day any interest in reading Atlas Shrugged? I do too, but I don't want to be that guy caught reading Atlas Shrugged somewhere. If that makes any sense.
Well, nobody ever finishes it, so if you do, it'll actually be like, oh, cool. Because everybody says that about like Gravity's Rainbow, but like people actually finish that because it's actually a book.
It's a great book, yeah.
And it's like. I don't know what Atlas Shrugged is, but I don't think it's a book exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I do
of course
too.
I'm being facetious, but
yeah,
John Galt is persuading others.
Persuading's adventure.
Persuade.
That's a good one though, because I feel like there's not a lot of other cultural things going on outside of the election itself, which obviously is a huge cultural happening. And that one scene, I feel like that whole little stretch packs a lot into that. So that'll about do it for this episode of Blowing Smoke. Anything to preview for The Wheel? As we look ahead to the end of season 1,
some good stuff going on.
One question that we can return to this, we can even answer it now, but like I'll at least pose it and we can return to it next episode. Like, let's say Mad Men only was a miniseries, and it ended with the next episode, like the end of season 1. Like, to what extent is that an ending of the show? Because I know Weiner, and we'll approach this every time we probably approach a season finale, that Weiner said he always wanted to like end every season, and this is how TV works. It's like you never really truly know if you're getting renewed. And so, like, he's like, and obviously there's a certain point where he was getting so much success with the show where the show was going to go on as long as he really wanted it to. But, like, I don't know if there's going to be a next season. If nothing ever happens and this show ends at this moment, like, I want to make sure I'll leave it at all on the field.
So think about his ending to season 5.
Yeah.
In terms of that.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious. But anyway.
Yeah.
You only live twice, ending moment.
Right. I think, like...
one for your dwellings.
I think season 4 is randomly among the better, most poetic in terms of that idea.
Yeah.
Even it's like meta-quoting of Groundhog Day actually is a very interesting thing to do. But...
Season 2 is probably the most like...
I'd say that's the one... I mean, I think it's a good finale, but it's also like, wait, no, this is the one that most...
Right.
I feel like season 3 is also begging a lot of questions.
And also, like, what are you doing in there?
Yeah. I think, honestly...
at the end of season 2, though. What are you doing in there at the moment?
Season 6 would have made, actually, I think, for a pretty great ending. Also, so, like, we'll evaluate all these as we go through them. But... I mean, to me, one of the enduring images of Don Draper is the final shot of the next episode.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's literally him. What I think's so great about it is him imagining the first part.
Yeah.
And even the carousel pitch, everybody talks about it. We'll talk about it, and we'll probably say less about it than everybody else because it's just been talked about to death.
Again, as we've said, it's like it's one of the most iconic things to come out of the show. That even people who've not watched the show know that scene.
But I think that in the moment, you kind of know it's not true. But there's a slight moment where you're like, he just found out about his brother. He's looking at the pictures of his family. Maybe he really does kind of care. But then it's ultimately also just saying, yeah, but he's just using it as... to get the pitch across.
Right.
And when the final moments happen where he like comes home, he's like, oh, my family's here. And then to really realize, no, he's just alone, actually, is what it is.
Yeah.
And even if he does want that, it's something he can't have because he is a broken person inside.
Yeah.
And just can't do.
I think another important thing with the very end of season 1 is it literally, I'm talking about even in the filmmaking, is directly contrasted with the very end of the show in season 7. Literally in terms of interior, exterior, camera movements reversed, lighting is reversed, like what he's wearing is reversed, the expression, it's like it actually it's going to serve as the bookend on one side that season 7 part 2, and we'll walk through this when we get there. We still got a long ways to go. Like to what extent that's a happy ending or what that means exactly, but it's very much a counterweight. And I think even intentionally so to how season 1 ends.
Yeah.
And there's also some shoes to drop with Peggy, some of which are not even fully dropped until the very beginning of season 2. Also, there's that's some questions that are in that
Do they
are
have
resolved.
The scene where Dawn visits her in this?
I think that's the very end of season 2, or the first episode of season 2.
Right,
I think that
because
comes
they
back
don't
up.
have that, in this season. So I always forget that because I'm like, where does that fit?
Because
in?
I think that
Exactly.
basically it's not even a cliffhanger. It implies that no one really knew about it at the end of season 1. But then I think that scene is at the beginning of season 2, and where that's kind of a revelation that Don knows that secret about Peggy.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
and that's his moment to say to somebody else, since he didn't get away with this whole thing and he's still stuck, of saying, get out of here. It will shock you how much it never happened. Like, to tell her she's at the moment where she literally can do that. And she's like, what?
Yeah.
And that's its own moment for her to have that central question that she finally gets to ask him in the finale of the show is, what did you do that made you say something like that to me?
Yeah.
That you could say, get out of here. That'll fix everything if you just run away.
Right.
Yeah. And also realizing, no, that didn't fix anything. And that ultimately her life had value because she didn't do that.
Yeah.
Which is also a sad reality in the sense of that she just gave the child up, and that's the part of the life she couldn't have, that she could have again, but she didn't the first time.
And the suitcase episode between them two pokes at this a little bit and makes a little bit of a reference to how that has the shadow that's left on her and her life a little bit. What I love too, and I know we're a ways away from it, but with the suitcase, it literally comes almost exactly in the middle point of the show if you just think about what's before it and what's after it. And that obviously is the ultimate. One of the many reasons that episode is great is that it is the ultimate distillation of the Don and Peggy relationship.
Because you even have the great moments of them dancing to My Way, but it's like you already did that in a whole episode with Suitcase, a version of that. But that's almost more of a functional way for them to reconcile after a season of hatred anyway. That's more what that's for.
And that was all also leading up to her big pitch at the end of season 7, part 1. How refreshing is it, by the way, we can talk about a show like this that doesn't involve a multiverse or memorizing fantasies and kingdoms, and this is literally on the scale of human drama.
It's all about no one wants to be called.
And the historical lens of the show obviously does lead it to all these connections.
Yeah,
and
our
things
Red
to make.
Wedding will be in season 3 when Conrad Hilton is behind that bar.
Yeah.
And is oh my God, there he is. So how do you say hamburger?
Yeah, in Japanese.
In Japanese,
Hilton.
How do you say towels in Farsi? It's good.
It's a great show. We might keep watching it.
I guess.
So we got one more episode of this season, and then we're gonna have our kind of end of the season episode where it's not gonna be as long, obviously, as one of these where we kind of run through our episode rankings, which I honestly haven't thought too much about yet. So it'll be interesting to see how that'll shake out. And then season awards that we'll give out for that. And we don't have an official name for it yet, but then we got another thing planned between seasons that I think I'm excited to talk about eventually, and we'll get into at a future date. So, hard to believe we're almost done with season 1. So,
yeah,
I know we started this back in October, I guess it would have been, and I know we've not been doing it continuously. We've taken some breaks, but we're already through the end of season 1 now.
Yeah,
so
only 7 to go.
Yeah,
or 6 to go. Sorry,
6 to go.
Wait, there's a new season? What?
There is an above-average chance by the end of this show there could be more Mad Men that exists in some form. I'm not saying I want that. I'm not saying that's even news on the horizon, but I'm just saying could happen.
I have never thought that is a likely possibility
realistic
as
possibility.
much as everyone else. I just don't feel it. But
all I'll say about that is, and we can talk about this as we get further along the show, I feel like Weiner wants to be the guy who didn't do that.
Yeah. But at the same time, he has had such career suicide with the Romanovs that I think it's more likely than it was before that, obviously, but I still just don't think it's... And after him seeing The Return and being like, nah, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I just feel like he would be more...
Yeah, I'm not... I would... Me, personally, I would put the chances of it at 40%. And I think that's, to me, that feels like a good number.
I'm at 20. I feel like it's but no.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't see it personally. But you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. I feel like if he did, he would try not to touch Don at all and just do the rest of everybody else.
Yeah.
Which I guess would be fine, but I don't know. It just feels kind of like, why? I mean, we know that's the obvious answer is it shouldn't be, but
yeah.
I don't know.
Who
It just
knows?
doesn't feel realistic.
Time will tell. Anything to add before we...
There was something else I was going to say since you brought that up, but now I can't really think of what it was.
We'll have a few more episodes. You can remember it and
I guess.
get back to us on,
Yeah.
This is Kyle.
This is Levi.
Take care. God bless.
And by the way, since you're saying God bless, a similar statement that could be said is no one wants to be called.
Shortly after Vice President Nixon officially concedes the election in the early afternoon of Wednesday, November 9th, Senator Kennedy appears before the press in Hyannisport, Massachusetts. With him are his wife, his father and mother, his many brothers and sisters. After acknowledging congratulatory wires from President Eisenhower and Mr. Nixon, he addresses all Americans.
To all Americans, I say that the next 4 years are going to be difficult and challenging years for us all. The election may have been a close one, but I think that there is general agreement by all of our citizens that a supreme national effort will be needed in the years ahead to move this country safely through the 1960s. I ask your help in this effort, and I can assure you that every degree of mind and spirit that I possess will be devoted to the long-range interests of the United States and to the cause of freedom around the world. So now my wife and I prepare for a new administration and for a new baby. Thank you.
It is the climax of one of the closest, most dramatic elections in American history.
And that concludes our broadcast day.
You best be sleeping.